You show someone the third round of Saturday night's main event. Show someone who doesn't believe in this sport. Show someone who is not a fan of this sport that third round. And there is no chance in hell that they don't become an MMA fan. If they're not an MMA fan already, you need to have that third round in your back pocket in case you're ever at a party, at some kind of social function, a coffee shop, a bar, and you mention to someone that you're either an MMA fan, that you work in MMA, that you're, and they question you and they say that it's a crazy sport, that it's barbaric, that it's this, that. Show them that third round. I don't know. And of course, we're always, victims of the moment. And we get all fired up, and it's the best this, the best that. I don't know if I've ever seen a round quite like that with those stakes attached on that type of stage involving two of the best in their respective weight class that left me with the feelings that I felt after watching that, in awe of both men, to be honest. But of course, more so for Alex Volkanovski. To see him dig down deep. Remember, if you're a newer fan and you're watching that, and you're probably watching that in awe as well, but you don't know who Brian Ortega is, because let's be honest, over the last few years, he hasn't fought all that much. Going into this fight, he had the one fight against Max Holloway in 2018, and then had one other fight in between Holloway and Saturday night. It was the win over Korean Zombie. So you probably think he's a great fighter. You probably know that he's skilled on the feet. We saw what he did to Zombie. But you may not know what it is like to be on the ground with Brian Ortega, let alone when he's, locking in a triangle choke. Remember, his nickname is T-City. That's his finishing move. There are very few guys in this sport or girls in this sport who have finishing moves. Ronda had the armbar. Ortega has the triangle. This guy's good at that. This guy's good at this. But that's his finishing move. If this was pro wrestling, he slaps that on. It's usually night-night. Go to sleep. GTS. He slapped that on after one of the tightest guillotine chokes that I have ever seen. And to see Alex Volkanovski, this guy who, like I said, doesn't get the respect that he deserves, doesn't get the love that he deserves, doesn't get the attention that he deserves, doesn't get the push that he deserves, to see how the fans treated him last July after the fight against Max Holloway, the rematch, which again, I remind you, he didn't score it for himself. The guy just went out there and fought against one of the best, 25 minutes, and the judges gave it to him. Close, controversial, whatever, he got the hate for it. Why should he get the hate? Why should any fighter get the hate? If you go out and fight with your heart, give it your all, why do you get the hate? Send the hate towards the judges. Send them to the officials. Send it to the people who put those judges around the cage. Not to the actual guy who went 25 minutes and fought his heart out, fought his ass off, and he got hate. And I saw people say, paper champ, fake champ, unworthy champ, drop the belt, strip him of the belt, blah, blah, blah. And now to see that freaking guy dig down deep and say, not today. Not today, MFers. Not today. You're not taking my belt today. To see him have that, to see Ortega have that choke sunken in like that, as deep, and to think like, wow, Ortega got it. Like that's what I would say to myself, holy crap, Ortega got it. He finally is going to become a champion. And Volkanovski said, not today. Holy smokes. One of the greatest examples of heart, of will, of determination that I have ever seen watching this sport. Not today. And some way, somehow he got out of that. I was blown away. And then he gets caught in a triangle and he gets out of that. Now, I think the guillotine was tighter than the triangle, but again, this is one of the greatest at applying a triangle in MMA history. And he gets out of that and he hulks up. I mean, just an unbelievable fight. That was the round of the year. And I saw some people afterwards saying, how could that be fight of the year? How could that be fight of the year? What else is in discussion right now for fight of the year? I went to the great site Tapology. You know Tapology, right? Tapology, they do a phenomenal job. And they have rankings. And what they do is like they have ongoing rankings for the year. So if you scroll down to 2021 and I look at what the fights of the year are right now in 2021, at the top of the list is Holloway Cater. That was a great performance. That was an amazing win for Max Holloway. That wasn't a fight of the year. That was very one-sided. And don't be fooled by the 50-45 and all that nonsense. You have to watch the fight. to understand just how close. That's one of the closest 50 to 45s or whatever you want to call it that I've seen in quite some time. Reyes Prochaska, great fight. Oliveira Chandler, great fight. We just saw nothing like we saw on Saturday. And again, I don't even want to debate that. Who gives a crap? Round of the year for sure. One of the greatest, feats of strength that I've ever seen out of a guy who is literally on the brink of being submitted, going out cold, and somehow in that moment, cut up and everything, is able to come back and win and hulk up like that. I mean, just so inspired. And I'm happy to see that Volkanovski before that fight was talking about, needing a finish, understanding that there's an entertainment aspect to all of this, understanding that you need to get the fans behind you, especially coming off of what happened in July of last year, didn't fight in March. He needed some momentum, some buzz. This was better. And of course, you don't script this, but this was better than a finish, in my opinion. This was better than a 10-second knockout. This is the type of stuff that gets a bunch of fans behind you, that gets people believing in you, loving in you, attaching themselves to you, believing in your journey, getting emotionally invested, like, holy smoke. And then to see him at the Raiders game on Sunday with his crew, Eugene Behrman, Dan Hooker, his manager Ash there, and to see him being celebrated in Vegas, thousands of miles away from Australia, really just special stuff. And yeah, it's important to mention Australia because historically, a guy like that isn't getting over here in America. And to think of all the stuff that he and his teammates, not to mention the guys in New Zealand, and we talked to Hooker about that last week, like these guys aren't living like we are right now, for better or worse. I don't know what's right, but they have to deal with a lot of restrictions to be at their very best in a career where your window is this small to make the most amount of money, to get the most amount of attention and fights and all that stuff. They are having to overcome and deal with obstacles that athletes around the world haven't had to deal with. Top level athletes, I'm talking about, the most gifted out there, they haven't had to deal with in decades, centuries. It's never been like this. We've never lived through something like this before. And of course, there are people who are out there dealing with all kinds of hardships. And there's, I don't have to get into the pandemic. We all know what we've been through. But imagine trying to get to the best shape possible, the best condition possible, to fight another human being where you have a belt, where you know that if you lose that belt, you're going down the ladder and you're probably not popular enough to get an immediate rematch, all that stuff. And to be in that kind of condition, to get out of a choke like that multiple times in a third round, I was just blown away, man. I was just blown away. If you are one of those people who has not watched that fight on Saturday, and especially that third round, if you want to go straight to the third, by all means, do yourself a favor, watch the 25 minutes and tell me afterwards that's not one of the greatest feats of athleticism, displays of heart, of will, of determination, of grit that you have ever seen in any kind of sporting event. I don't care if it's football, basketball, baseball, hockey, soccer. I don't care what it is. Blown away by that. And my respect for Brian Ortega. I feel for the guy. He's taken a ton of damage in 2 title fights now. 2 of his last 3 fights, he has absorbed a lot of damage, and you have to wonder about what kind of repercussions there'll be attached to that. He fought a great fight, but unfortunately, Volkanovski is a different breed. Volkanovski has now won 20 fights in a row in his career, 20 in a row, undefeated at featherweight, has now defeated the likes of Jose Aldo and Max Holloway and Brian Ortega. This guy is legit, and it's time we start talking about him as one of the very best, pound for pound, whatever. Now, I hope he doesn't move up to 155. He talked a little bit about that at the post-fight press conference. I don't understand for the life of me why on Friday, Saturday, they booked Holloway versus Yair. Good fight, but makes no sense. It's happening in November. Who would bat an eye if you just would have waited to see what happened and you do either Volkanovski Holloway 3 or Ortega Holloway 2? I know they were supposed to fight in July, but once that fight didn't happen, to me, the ship sailed. Just give Holloway his title fight. A lot of people thought he won last July. He's supremely talented. Why are you now doing this fight in November, 2 months after, a little less than 2 months, but 7 weeks after the title fight? You always want those contender fights to align with the championship fight. That's what I was talking about with Leon Edwards. And now it's 2 months after, so it leaves Volkanovski in a weird spot, in a very weird spot, in my opinion. And now he's like, oh, do I move up? There's no one really out there. unless they give it to Giga. Is Zabit coming back? I don't know. It seemed like his coach Mark Henry was hinting at that on Instagram, but still a lot of questions. That one was weird, but we'll have time to talk about that later. Tremendous fight, tremendous performance. Congrats to both men. I am still in awe of what Volkanovski did, and I can't wait to talk to him about it later. We know what happened in the co-main event. Valentina Shevchenko did what we all expected her to do, with all due respect to Lauren Murphy, who's a great fighter and has a great story. But like I said, the gap between Valentina Shevchenko and the rest of the division is bigger than any gap right now in the UFC, and dare I say, it's bigger than any gap between a champion and the contenders that we've ever seen, including when Demetrius Johnson was the champion at 125 pounds. It's just that big. She's on a different level. So she wins, fourth round, she looks great. And now you wonder, and then Cynthia Calvillo lost. So you wonder, who's going to fight her next? Is it going to be the winner of Alexa Grasso versus Joanne Calderwood? Do they wait and see what happens on December 11th between Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena? And then just if Nunes wins, you do the big fight, the trilogy fight in 2022. We shall see. A lot more questions there to be answered in the coming months. But then what about Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler? What can we say about that? Obviously, I said a lot last week, not feeling like Nick wanted to fight, not feeling like he was 100% in, feeling conflicted. And I know we get that from Nick. From time to time, we've gotten that for the past decade or so from him. We know how he feels about fighting. We know that he doesn't want to fight as much as he once did, that he doesn't like hurting people, that he's mellowed out, that he's grown up a lot. I mean, he's one of the most complicated characters in the sport's history, but he's also one of the most beloved. And I would say we're very protective of Nick, because Nick Diaz reminds us why we fell in love with this sport. He reminds us why we still love this sport. He's such a unique figure in the sport's history, did it his way, unapologetic, walking to the cage wearing jeans. Like, he's just a different kind of cat, a cult-like figure, him and his brother. But he was the guy way before Nathan Diaz was anyone in the sport. I mean, when Nathan Diaz appeared on The Ultimate Fighter Season 5, Nick Diaz was already one of the most popular fighters in the sport. Things have changed where the younger brother has become more popular than the older brother, but Nick Diaz is a legend. And so to see him conflicted, disinterested, out of shape, older, it was hard to watch. And I was worried. I was nervous about it. I was anxious. Like, I wasn't psyched for it. I wasn't excited. I was trying not to be a Debbie Downer, but like, to me, it was great to see him back. There was nostalgia, but I kind of wanted to get that over with because I was worried. And by the way, the type of situation, the type of fight that Dana White would be sitting at a press conference blasting another promoter about if the shoe was on the other foot. You know it. I know it. We all know it. And so he comes out there and it's Nick Diaz and he throws that, I don't know, spinning wheel kick. I don't know what that was at the beginning of the fight. And I'm just thinking like, oh my gosh, what are we about to see here? I mean, again, Nick Diaz was one of the most fit fighters in his day. I mean, never out of shape, always in shape, and there were posts of him like just a few months ago where he was ripped. I don't know if those were later grams or whatever. I don't know what happened. But clearly not the case. And he just seemed a little bit off, obviously older, rusty, but then the rust started to come off. And towards, the middle portion of the round, back into the round, I was like, all right, Nick, you still got it. Like, you still have the output. You still have the aggression. Obviously it's not the same, but it wasn't as depressing as the beginning of the round. The beginning of the round was, that was hard to watch. If you've watched Nick Diaz, if you watched Diaz Gomi, if you watched, Diaz Zaromskis, if you watch Diaz, like, that's not the same guy. And we all get older. We all get slower. We all get bigger. But that just wasn't the same guy. And so that was hard to watch. But then towards the end, and I gave him the first round. He was pouring it on. He was active. He was throwing a ton. And then I thought he lost a close second round. And then you see what happens in the third. And again, that's not Nick Diaz. To me, the way it looked was he broke his nose and he just said, I'm done. Not something he would have done in his previous life, but it just kind of hit him, I think. Again, he didn't go to the press conference. He had a short interview with Daniel Cormier, but it just seemed like he was done in that moment. And that was a bummer, man. It was a bummer. I hope he got paid a lot. I hope he's being taken care of. I hope he's being looked out for. And this is why, we talk about pensions. We talk about getting the fighters more money and more opportunities, because it seems like more often than not, we're left with this. Now, this wasn't quite Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz 3, but it was tough to watch. And even afterwards, hearing him say, I had that coming. Now, there's a few ways you could look at that. Was he talking about he had that coming because of how his career went? He was the bad boy. He's no longer the bad boy, that's for sure. He's just a sweet guy. Like, he's just a nice guy. He doesn't want a lot of attention. I don't think he likes the hoopla of fight week and all the glitz and glamour that comes with it. Could it mean he had it coming for the beating of 17 years ago where he beat Lawler? I don't know. I don't know how deep you want to go into that, but it's hard to watch someone in that state and say those things who used to be a completely different fighter in person. Even him saying, like, I didn't want to make the canvas too messy because of the blood. Like, that's just not Nick Diaz. And we love him. And I think the whole crowd, everyone there in Las Vegas probably respects Robbie Lawler. There's no one out there who doesn't respect Robbie Lawler. Again, a cult-like figure, a legend, a former champion, and it just felt like the place was quiet. They didn't know how to react because that wasn't Nick Diaz. And I think deep down, everyone was kind of hoping that Nick would turn back the clock and represent and all this stuff. And it was just hard to watch. I'm not going to sit here and say, you should retire, you should do this, you should do that. He's a grown man. He can do whatever he wants. I just hope that if he doesn't want to do this, he doesn't have to do this. Again, that's what I said leading up to the fight. Does he want to do this or does he have to do it? Well, in the end, we find out he kind of had to do it and he didn't even want to do it. Like, it was almost like he kept talking about, like, how did this fight get made? Even after the fact, how did it get made? I don't understand. Like, so there were some manager issues. Perhaps we could get some more insight into all of that with Caesar later on in the program. I'm looking forward to that conversation very much. But just hard to watch. And so you have the juxtaposition of Volkanovski doing something that's just, unbelievable. 99.9% of the public taps out to that on the planet. Most human beings do not win that athletic competition. You have Valentina doing her thing, and then you have, Nick in that scenario, and that was really tough. Curtis Blades, with a dominant win, but not really something to write home about, unfortunately. Jessica Andrade looked great. And then what about the Merab Dvalishvili fight? I almost feel bad for Merab because he got completely overshadowed. That win was just absolutely incredible. Gets dropped by Marlon Moraes. It looks like Marlon is just seconds away from finishing him. Merab has been one of those guys who all he does is win and dominate at 135, but doesn't get the attention that he deserves either. Maybe because he's not finishing, maybe because he's not, cutting mad promos. And then he just freaking, beast modes on Marlon. Also does a little old school Hulk Hogan and ends up finishing him in the second round. And a win over Marlon Moraes at any point in anyone's day, in anyone's career, is a big win. To win like that, huge. Absolutely huge. What a performance. What a comeback. Dan Hooker with an unbelievable performance considering everything he went through. 48 hours in Vegas, and there he is looking fantastic against Nasrat Hakparas. And you feel for Nasrat because he's been through a lot as well. Chris Dawkins with the big impressive win over Shamil Abdurakhimov. Talia Santos looks like a player at 125 with a win over Roxanne Modafferi. Jalen Turner had a very impressive performance against Urosh Medic. Nick Maximov looks solid, a disciple of the Diaz camp against Cody Brundage. And Matthew Semmelsberger just completely starched Martin Sano. Sano just got into the UFC because of Nick, and, big opportunity for him, but that was obviously a very one-sided 15-second win. And then Jonathan Pierce defeated Omar Morales. Prior to the card, we had the Hall of Fame And we had George St. Pierre, we had Mark Ratner, 2 Menches. Great to have the Hall of Fame back. I'm a big fan of the Hall of Fame. I want to see an independent MMA Hall of Fame, but I think what the UFC does is great and it's important, and there's no knock on that. I wish they would have a better spot for it than the staircase at the PI, but nevertheless, great to see everyone being celebrated. Like I said, St. Pierre and the late great Mark Randleman, Kevin Randleman, excuse me, Mark Ratner, Kevin Randleman, and Jon Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, which I think is one of the best fights in UFC history, if not the best fight in UFC history. UFC 165, September of 2013. And literally hours later, and I remember seeing an interview with Jon Jones on the red carpet, and he says, hey, it's so great to be out. It's so great to put on nice clothes, back in Las Vegas, all this stuff. And literally hours later, we find out that he got himself in trouble. First reported by ESPN's Mark Ramundi. He was arrested at 5:45 a.m. Friday at a resort near Las Vegas Boulevard and Flamingo Road. He was charged with misdemeanor, battery, domestic violence, and injuring or tampering with a vehicle, which is a felony in Las Vegas. We don't know a lot more about what happened, what he did, what his future is, but another lowlight and another depressing situation. And Dana White saying afterwards that, like, we can't bring him to Vegas. Fine, but let's not pretend that there haven't been other issues in other states as well, namely New Mexico, where he lives, also New York, where he used to live. Like, he's had transgressions there too. So it's not just a Vegas thing. To me, that's kind of oversimplifying things. Bummer of a situation. And you hope that he's able to figure it out. But how many times have we sat here? I was literally talking to Richard Schaefer on Wednesday, his new advisor, about 260 and 275 and the biggest fight is summertime. And then he's getting his flowers at the Hall of Fame. And then literally hours later, he's back behind bars. I don't know if a lot of you, and I've mentioned these names in relation to and in comparison to Jon Jones, but to me, it's Doc Gooden, it's Darryl Strawberry once again. Incredible athletes with God-given athletic abilities, superhuman, who just can't get out of their own way, who continuously mess it all up. Reminding me a bit of a story. Doc Gooden in 1986, the Mets won the World Series. He didn't show up to the parade because he was high, drunk, whatever, at some apartment in New York. Not quite the same, but here's that Hall of Fame induction, and now it will be forever attached to, and a few hours later, like how unfortunate and how symbolic of his career as of late to where a few hours later this happens. Just a bummer. You hope that he'll be able to figure it out, and you hope that the details aren't too gruesome. But that is serious stuff. That is nothing to scoff at. So that happened. We found out on Saturday afternoon that Aljamain Sterling is apparently out of the October 30th title fight. Just had Aljo on the show, out of the October 30th title fight against Petr Yan, the rematch to settle it. Lingering neck issues. My understanding is they went to Rob Font, unavailable. Looks like they'll try to do Rob Font versus Jose Aldo later this year, which is a great fight. Not finalized, chill out, but that's what I'm hearing. Obviously, TJ Dillashaw had surgery after the Corey Sandhagen fight, so unavailable. Sugar Sean O'Malley threw his name in the hat. I don't know as of right now if they're going to go in that direction. It doesn't look like it, but crazier things have happened. And so there's Corey Sandhagen, who I think is a very worthy replacement, especially for an interim title fight. They're both coming off losses. Yes, I know Petr Yan, was DQ'd, and that's not your traditional loss. But hey, Sandhagen, in my opinion, won that fight against TJ Dillashaw. So you have the interim title fight. If Yan wins, you hopefully run it back in 2022 with Aljo. If Sandhagen wins, you have a great story and a great rematch where Sandhagen gets to avenge the loss to Aljo that occurred back in June of 2020. What a great fight that is. on paper. Now, not done, last I checked, but on paper, a very, very fun fight. So we'll see if they get that done. A couple other things happened this morning. Found out that Tyron Woodley got the tattoo on his middle finger, the I Love Jake Paul tattoo. It might be a little too late, unfortunately, for the chosen one, but we shall see. It looks like Jake's going to return in December, but I haven't been hearing a lot of talk surrounding that fight. It sounds like we're not going to get the Islam Makhachev versus Rafael dos Anjos fight. According to multiple reports, I think MMA Junkie reported it first. MMA Fighting confirmed it as well. I believe it was the Brazilian beast, Guilherme Cruz. It looks like a knee injury for RDA, and that's a fight that has now been booked several times. It's starting to feel like Khamzat Chimaev versus Leon Edwards, or not quite Tony Ferguson versus Khabib, but a fight that we've now gotten excited about, seen it get booked, and then it, fails to come to fruition. Also found out that Miesha Tate unfortunately got COVID, so her fight against Caitlin Vieira is now off, and the Dumont home fight has been bumped up to a main event fight that's on October 16th, I do believe. So a lot going on in the world of MMA. Of course, the big story, UFC 266. What a performance from Alexander Volkanovski. I hope he's okay. I hope he's not too banged up to join us later today. I'm told he is going to join us. And I can't wait. I've now watched it twice, and I can't wait to watch it again.